Human Loss, written by LaughingTarget. A long, high-pitched tone from an electrocardiogram punctuated the chaos in the operating theatre, adding to the stress Lyric was under. On a stainless steel table, under bright lights, was the body of a soldier. Lyric was feeling panic set in as he looked at the soldier. He was a member of the canid-type species called the Berrigan. He had multiple plasma burns across his body, a missing arm and severe lacerations in his kidneys and intestines. The soldier, either 19 or 20 years of age, was one of many casualties in the war that the Confederacy was engaged in with the Galsack Pact. "Bring the crash cart," a feminine voice called out over the din, snapping Lyric out of her panic spiral. Lyric pulled the cart with an array of chemical stimulants, respiratory tools, and a defibrillator. Another nurse was already shaving away even more of the Berrigan's fur to attach electric leads should other efforts fail. The poor soldier's body, already hooked up to blood packs and monitors, continued to sprout new artificial connections. "Adrenaline," the doctor commanded with calm authority. Lyric handed the syringe to the surgeon, a human with pitch-dark skin, who inserted it into the Berrigan. "Set the metronome and attach the BVM," the doctor stated again. Lyric did as instructed and, after setting the metronome, attached the bag valve mask over the patient's snout. Lyric began squeezing the red bag attached to the mask in rhythm with the metronome. The surgeon's powerful human hands, forged from musculature designed to resist the tremendous gravity of their homeworld, began to pump the heart. Lyric winced when the human strength cracked the patient's ribcage. It was, in these difficult conditions, a necessity to manually pump the heart. The war overwhelmed the Confederacy's medical capacity, requiring the need to resort to more primitive methods where modern machinery was in short supply. The surgeon's collected demeanor, while keeping with the rhythm of the metronome, helped Lyric focus on her work. Manual heart massaging was only something she had read about in medical school. The fact that the human surgeon was so adept at it was shocking to Lyric. The effort persisted for what felt like an eternity. The long, stressful tone continued to peel in the air. The effort wasn't working. "We've got to try the AED," the surgeon called out, after stopping her efforts. Lyric returned to the cart and set the dial while another nurse attached electric leads to the soldier's chest. She knew resorting to the electric shock was a last-ditch effort in a dire situation. "Clear," the surgeon called out and activated the AED. The body jolted, and the high-pitched tone briefly paused. Lyric's hopes it worked were dashed when the tone returned. The surgeon continued to shock the patient. Each shock paused the screeching tone only a moment, just for it to return once more, mocking the efforts to save the soldier. The tone finally ceased when the surgeon reached over and flicked the EKG switch to off. The surgeon picked up a nearby recording device and spoke into it. "Patient time of death 1932 GST. Apparent cause of death severe blood loss from ruptured kidney. Additional autopsy recommended for full extent of injuries." Lyric stood in stunned silence as she looked at the soldier on the table. Bright lights, clean surfaces, and sterile scent of a hospital disinfectants mixed with the red and iron tang of blood. While Lyric attempted to collect her thoughts, the other nurses huddled into the fetal position against the wall. Death was not something modern medical practitioners ever got used to. If a patient made it to hospital, medical technology ensured near-guaranteed survival. The only ones who failed to live were those who didn't survive the accident and, therefore, had no need to arrive in a surgery. The war changed things. Evac ships arrived hourly, with severe wounds the medical ships were unable to contend with. The critical shortage of equipment cascaded to failures and death in operating rooms. Medical professionals weren't used to the psychological effects of losing a patient on the table, except for the humans. This species had developed a reputation for being monstrous, strong, durable, terrifying in battle, and they had a penchant to create bizarre technologies. On top of that, they never seemed to flinch in danger. The lead surgeon, a woman named Janelle Richards, was unflappably calm during the stressful affair. Even now Janelle was kneeling next to the shaken nurse on the floor and whispering calming words. She then helped the poor man up and escorted him to the men's locker room to clean up after surgery. Lyric entered her own locker room and began disrobing. The stained garments went into a cart for disposal, while she took her body into the showers. She ran a clawed hand through her thick fur. Even though the scrubs protected her body from stains, she still felt like the soldier's blood had collected on her body. Lyric lost track of time as she stared blankly into the stream of water since, when she got out, Janelle had already dressed in her street clothes. The woman's thick black curled hair atop her head, previously hidden under a surgical cap, puffed out in every direction. She wore a black jacket over a red shirt and had a pair of blue cloth leggings the humans called jeans. There was no indication what had occurred in the operating theater bothered her. Images of the soldier lying on the table kept intruding on Lyric's mind, her eyes staring up at her, pleading for help. She imagined his mouth moving, blaming her for her failure. The long tone of the EKG screamed at her, "You failed! You failed! You failed!" The gentle touch pulled Lyric out of her spiral. She looked up and saw Janelle, who spoke. "We saved 7 today. That last one wasn't your fault." "What would you know?" Lyric shrugged away from Janelle's hand. "You're a Deathworlder. You don't understand these things." Instead of the expected response, Janelle instead stood and went to her locker. The gentle sound of rustling papers could be heard as she returned. Lyric looked up and saw the doctor with an extended flyer. "Here," Janelle said. "Come with me. I think it'll help." Lyric gently took the flyer and looked it over. The Confederacy supplied entertainment to the rear support during the war. Supposedly, it was meant to keep up morale. The entertainment the prior week was an odd Earth group doing something called pro wrestling. While Lyric appreciated the incredible acrobatics, the odd melodrama act that went along with it confused her. This week, the entertainment was in the cantina. There were 3 musical acts headlined by Lyric's favorite idol group, the Stardust Boys. She did find the idea intriguing and thought getting to see her crush Miz live on stage as an intimate setting would be fun. Maybe the upbeat music would also help her mood. Lyric shoved the flyer in her pocket and replied, "All right, I'll go." The pair left the lockers and passed by the break room where the television was playing. "The human worlds have agreed to send direct military support, adding to the growing coalition of Confederate planets assisting the combined Confederate support. The enforcers are from the human sub-jurisdiction of Russia, China, Greater Europe, Canada, Australia, India, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Mexico, and coordinated by the United States. The first direct engagement is expected within the next week." As the mile passed in Janelle's lips, "Looks like our job will be over soon." Lyric knew the humans were usually strong, but she wasn't sure what their small population would do in a major galactic-scale war. She was at least happy Janelle was optimistic. The duo left their surgery and walked across the temporary field hospital complex, set on a low-gravity planet, to accommodate the least sturdy Confederacy species. The field hospital was immense. Shuttles were constantly coming and going from orbit where the blink of hyperspace drives twinkled like stars. Visible on the horizon was a tremendous planetary defense tower, which provided a hyperdrive inhibition field and, if a fleet did come, anti-space weaponry. Their planet was just one of many supporting the bloody conflict. There was a never-ending stream of wounded arriving from the fronts. The 8 surgeries and 1 failure Lyric had before needing rest were like a grain of sand on a beach. She felt small and useless. The cantina venue was a short walk away from their surgery. The hospital complex was constructed from temporary buildings and rings. From orbit, the hexagonal rings would appear like a massive honeycomb on the surface. The other ring consisted of hospital space, convalescents, and residence for hospital personnel. The central part of the ring was designed to natural parks and gardens. At the center were entertainment and food buildings. The arrangement helped blunt the psychological effects of being stuck in a hospital for lengthy periods of time for both patients and staff. Every window had a view of trees, grass, and fountains. The pair showed their hospital credentials at the door before entering the facility. Inside, the cantina was arranged in small 2-person tables in a horseshoe shape around a stage against the far wall. Where Lyric entered, both left and right, a long bar wrapped around the edge of the building. The room was already bustling with hospital staff on their designated break period. Instead of trying to find a table on the floor, Janelle went along the side and found a pair of seats at the bar with a good view of the stage. The bartender was a member of the Roo, an avian species. He had purple feathers and a purple beak, which contrasted weakly with the tuxedo he wore. He wiped down the already immaculately clean bar with a towel. "What can I get the two ladies this evening?" Lyric was having a rough day and decided she could tie one on tonight, and ordered large. "Anything with 3% alcohol in it." The Roo nodded and looked at Janelle. "I suspect you'll be wanting something from our special human stock." "You don't happen to have any Old Soul bourbon in stock? I'm feeling homesick," Janelle replied. "As it happens, we do. We have a bottle of Series 1, the Roo replied. "I'll take a double then," Janelle said. After the bartender handed Lyric a glass of blue liquor, he went to a special ventilation hood, which contained a series of bottles. He placed his hands inside rubber gloves, inserted in the side, and began mixing a drink before capping it with a metal lid. The bartender extracted the glass and gave it to Janelle. It wasn't that the fumes of human alcohol was toxic to other species. It was a safety measure to ensure that no one accidentally drank one. The glass Janelle had before her on the bar top had enough alcohol in it to give 40 non-human species a strong buzz. Lyric suddenly felt like she didn't want to be in the cantina anymore. Her mind went back to the soldier on the table, and here she was, drinking herself stupid with 3% blue sapphire and waiting to watch her favorite idol group sing. "I don't think this is a good idea." Lyric stood to leave when Janelle spoke. "Stick it out. Trust me. It'll help." "If you say so," Lyric replied and sat back down. What did the Deathworlder know? They could shrug off powerful force slugs, and she even heard about the one special force human that needed dozens of Chikao soldiers to kill. Soon the lights dimmed, and the first act came on stage. Lyric recognized him as a famous Snapian comedian. She loved the videos she saw of his jokes, and he did amazing work integrating his head crest into his act. Except tonight, everything he did fell flat to her. The response in the room was muted, even when he told his most famous joke about the Snapian trying a human bodysuit. It only generated a few mild chuckles. The poor man was even beginning to look uncomfortable on stage. After the act ended, crews began clearing the stage to make room for the Stardust Boys. Lyric felt like she should be excited. She was a mere 20 meters away from where Mizmiz would stand and sing. Yet she felt empty. When the Stardust Boys came out on stage, there was more response from the audience. It was still muted compared to the normal reaction from their concerts. Lyric looked at Mizmiz, giving a bow, and she felt nothing. Her favorite idol was right there, and she couldn't muster a small clap, let alone a scream of joy. The show was perfection. All 5 boys moved in flawless choreography, and their singing was the best Lyric had heard from them. The lights, the pounding bass, and the upbeat tunes reverberated in the room. Yet still, Lyric felt nothing. Her mind continued to stray back to the poor soldier laying dead on the operating table. After the set ended, Lyric stood as the room gave a small clap, and a few whistles rang out from the crowd. She turned to Janelle. "This isn't working. Thanks for trying. I think I'll head back to my room and rest." Lyric prepared to join the people exiting the venue when Janelle's hand caught her arm. "This isn't what I wanted you to hear. There's still one more act." Lyric was confused. She thought the Stardust Boys was the show. Pulling out the flyer she'd shoved in her pocket earlier, she looked over the names in the paper. There, below the Stardust Boys, was one more group, the Mama Elisha Band. "Who is that?" Lyric asked. "They're from my home state of Mississippi." Now hush. "They'll start soon." Janelle lifted a glass, pushed open the sip hole, and took a drink. Her eyes were glued to the stage. The room had mostly cleared out. Only a dozen or so patrons remained in the quiet bar. The stage had a single drum set and a microphone on a stand up front. The lights in the room went out, leaving only a dim beam illuminating the stage. In the silence, 4 humans walked out, 3 men and 1 woman. Each of them had the same dark skin and black hair as Janelle. One man carried a brass instrument, while another carried a wooden stringed instrument as tall as he was. The third man sat behind the drums, while the woman, wearing a red sequins dress which sparkled in the light, stood before the mic. There was no fanfare and no introduction. The human with the brass instrument pressed one end against his lips. The one on the drums began a slow beat with a snare, and the man with the brass blew. A low melody, made from a long tones, pealed in the air, and the man with the tall stringed instrument began to pluck. The string instrument's deep thrum filled the air and added to the mournful memory. The woman began to sing. The song's tempo was slow and the woman's voice pitched low. The lyrics made of long-held notes. She sang of hardship, loss, and pain. An intricate mix of poetry and tune reverberated in Lyric's body as she sat in the darkness. The mostly empty room added to the mournful sensation seeping into her bones. Tears began to flow as the woman sang of losing a child to disease. Her story mixed the horrors of poverty and death while ripping at Lyric's very soul. Numbness was replaced by sorrow as she fell into the tune sung by a sparkling woman in red on the stage. Then it was over. The song didn't end with a big finale or a flash. The volume slowly lowered and faded away, much like the lives of those in the song. Silence returned to the dark room. No claps were heard, nor the chatter of people. The four on stage gave a small bow, and, just as silently as they entered, they left. They were ghosts who arrived and told a mournful tale, only to fade away once more in the night. Lyric's tears kept flowing. She turned to reach for a bar napkin and dry her eyes, and, to her surprise, she saw Janelle. The human's eyes were also tearing as she silently stared out at the stage. Here, the powerful, terrifying Deathworld was weeping to a song the same as Lyric. I don't understand. Why did you want me to hear such a sad song when we're surrounded by all its death? Lyric whispered. Instead of answering directly, Janelle said something different. The people of the Confederation have a number of misconceptions about us. Humanity, through a unique set of conditions and random chance, look to you to be monsters. We are strong, durable, and seem unflappable in stress. Janelle paused and picked up a napkin of her own to dab away the tears. Where we are from, we are weak, fragile, and, until recently, had been constantly reminded of it. A meager 2 centuries ago, even our wealthiest elites would lose children to common disease. War, sickness, and hatred ran rampant. Why would you want to make depressing music then? Why not happy music? Lyra asked, not understanding the reasoning behind the song she just heard. Why would anyone ever want to listen to something so sad? We learned something important. When dealing with hardship, it is important to confront it. We developed tragic plays, black humor, and, from where I'm from, we created the blues. We learned if we attempted to distract ourselves from the horrors of our world with happy tunes, we only made things worse. Toxic positivity, Janelle explained. These songs aren't meant to remind us things are bad. They're meant to help us overcome it by making us confront reality. I still don't understand, Lyric said. Tell me, Janelle motioned with her drink. How are you feeling now? Lyric stopped and thought. Her sadness and pain were still present, but it was no longer unbearable. It was as if the tears the song induced drained away the depression and hopelessness she felt earlier in the evening. I feel like I can go on tomorrow. Janelle gave a small smile, her white teeth brilliant against the dark skin. It's a start. You'll never feel truly happy in times like these. It's a constant struggle and challenge. What we can do is confront it and not back down. We still have more lives to save tomorrow. We can then take solace. This will not go on forever. Lyric was beginning to understand. The humans were from a death world. She had only thought them as terrifying giants amongst the stars. She never stopped to consider what they had to go through living on one. She looked over Janelle and saw no sign of natural claws, an armored skeleton, or large fangs. They had to contend with a hostile environment without imposing speed or thick skin. And not only did they survive in such hostile environments, they thrived. The humans weren't monsters. They lived among them and came out strong. They had wisdom in how they approached loss and pain. Lyric resolved herself. The humans would too be broken if they refused to confront the pain of life. Lyric would do the same. She had patients' lives counting on it. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.